United States Steel welcomes you to Perspective, staged for auto manufacturers and suppliers to the automotive industry at Detroit's Cobo Hall, June 1st through 4th, 1964. This is a recreation of a gay 90s barroom, resplendent with genuine automotive memorabilia, where invited guests congregated. The lively tinkling of a honky-tonk piano added its stimulating flavor to the room. Libation was dispensed by appropriately costumed bartenders behind a bar adorned with authentic art of the period. Dinner, of course, came later. At the appointed time, the lights dimmed and attention centered on the piano as it moved into the next area and perspective.
Excuse me, young lady, but we need a perspective that's new. We're half crazy to get information from you. You can forget about conjecture, and we certainly don't want a lecture. But please disclose why the bar is closed. You've a reason. Now, isn't that true?
Our story begins before 1902, when the motor car was very new. A romance blossomed that was tried and true between steel and the automobile. Now we've got to have a clear perspective how the automen were very selective. They put demands on materials that were really effective. It was steel for the automobile. There's no doubt about it that steel would be right. There were countless possibilities then in sight. Let's back up and see it in a brand new light. Steel and the automobile. In 1901, it was put to the test, and steel was challenged with all the rest. Which material would prove to be best for use in the automobile? Now, the steel men knew that they had a good deal when the tiller was replaced by the steering wheel. The man in the auto sort of liked the feel of steel in the automobile. The race had begun as the auto sought fame, and soon it could boast of a pressed steel frame. Spokes made of wire were the next that came to link steel with the automobile. Yet one more villain was sweeping the nation, and the automen knew safety had to be the salvation. All steel bodies really used imagination for steel in the automobile. So the auto and the hero saw a happy day, and ever since then it's been the same way. The moral of the story, it's easy to say, is steel with the automobile. Now if a fresh perspective began back here, let's move on up to another year. We'll throw a new light and make it clear why steel stayed with the automobile.
Now I'm beginning to get the idea. Steel and the motor car really grew up together. Excuse me, young lady. Am I on the right track so far?
Yeah?
Am I on the right track? That steel was used in the automobile from the beginning.
Yeah.
Well, that's quite a history, isn't it?
Yeah?
Well, I just mean that when you consider the different shapes and designs that one sees in the motor car, it's a little amazing that so much of it can be designed from steel, right?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Why, did you know that in the 1920s, steel was being used more and more in the automobile, being shaped and smoothed into a myriad of designs?
Yeah.
You did. Well, then I bet you don't know the reason for steel being so popular when the car was growing up, shall we say.
Oh, yes, sir. You see, sir, every mind that was behind the wheel of the automobile or thereabouts had but one desire in view. He knew he must make a car the consumer really cared about. Nothing else would ever do. We've dreamed about and schemed about, we'd even like to scream about the flexibility of steel. It's true for you, not new for you. There's nothing steel won't do for you. The flexibility of steel. Bend it, twist it, not impossible. Any form you can see. Like new steel posts on broader windshields for better visibility. Reversibility and versatility. No end to steel's ability. The flexibility of steel. Mr. Engineer and Mr. Stylist both took a new point of view. And new cars made with steel closed bodies meant safety and comfort too. Now it's a fact, don't argue that. We found a new way of looking at the flexibility of steel. We can roll it, weld it, form it too. For wire wheels, poopy-doo, or shining bumpers front and back. Raw and rugged, smooth and flat. And with open eyes, we realize just where your new perspective lies. With flexibility in steel, wackadoo, wackadoo, wackadoo. With flexibility in steel, vodio, vodio, vodio. In steel, in United States steel, a
Yes, I think I see it now. Even though steel has been around a long time, its capabilities were still unlimited, right?
Yeah, man.
It is true that during the next 20 years, the use of reliable steel was responsible for even greater advancements in the automotive industry.
Yeah, man.
So steel was still hot with sizzling new ideas after proving itself for all those years.
Yeah, man. Yeah, man. Yeah, man. We got steel, we got steel, we got steel, we got a steel of a deal for the automobile. So many materials that are new are available to you. They really cover the field, but from the bumper to the throttle, nothing they got'll take the place of steel. In the automobile, we got steel, we got steel, we got steel, we got a steel of a deal for the automobile. Now just knock 3 times and whisper steel to get the inside story on the automobile. They made tin-plated pistons, forged axle housing too, all from steel to save some cash for you. Now here is a hot bit of information. Now steel seems to fit every type of situation. If you stay with steel, you can bet on more. Like the all-steel top that came in 1934. We got steel, we got steel, we got steel, we got a steel of a deal for the automobile. With the strength of steel, new design began, and in 1949 they made the hardtop sedan, and the all-steel station wagon really went far. It was a soft, smooth ride thanks to torsion bar. Now in the 1940s, when they cared about design, they found once more that steel would be fine. It was available in grades they hadn't seen before, and the value of the high-styled steel was more. We got steel, we got steel, we got steel, we got a steel of a deal for the automobile. Just open up your eyes and you'll see a new horizon. The future perspective is real. It's really no exaggeration that we got imagination for the use of steel in the automobile. We got United States Steel for the automobile. Steel, 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 steel for advancements made in the automobile. Steel, 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 steel. The steel of the deal for the automobile. Steel, 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 steel.
Well, there certainly can't be any doubt by now. I know steel has unlimited potential, but where do we go from here?
Where do we go from here? Well, we go right to the man at U.S. Steel, and we make our problems very clear. We have a new perspective, so we make a deal for steel and the automobile. The car of today must be safe and strong, one that keeps costs down all along, yet built of materials that just can't go wrong, like steel and the automobile. So the story now is 64, and steel is offering even more. We hope we've succeeded in opening the door for steel and the automobile. Please, sir, see, sir, this was my answer true on what the use of steel in a car can do. Well, it's really nothing new, sir, that the auto has a future. But we think it's grand if steel is planned to be part of the automobile.
Well, there it is, the perspective on steel. You know, young lady, you're absolutely right. Steel has played an impressive role in the growth of the auto. But the important thing to remember is that this material answers today's demands by anticipating tomorrow. That's right. With the advantage of hundreds of years of reliability behind it, steel has all the potential of an exciting new material. Yes, it's a pretty car, all right. That's steel. But wait until you see your cars a few years from now. Why, steel is just beginning to meet the demands of the automotive world with research that has perfected materials to be both economical and feasible. Now wait, just a minute, before you rush off. There is a lot of truth behind the ideas of the future. And I know you'll want to see some of these exciting innovations from United States Steel. So, gentlemen,
we are here, right here, and we'd like to welcome all of you on behalf of United States Steel and make some suggestions as to how you can reduce the cost of production in the automotive industry through the use of steel, of course, United States Steel. These suggestions encompass 4 by number, and we'd like to start with this one. We're suggesting interchangeability through the use of, well, designing moldings like this, for instance, which can be used in several locations instead of just one. And we'll put that in perspective in just 1 minute. Suggestion number 2 involves designing sheet metal components like this so as to avoid or minimize the use of expensive matching dies. Now, this piece, for instance, can simply be formed on regular brake press or blanking equipment. Now, we know that some of you have already been using these techniques, but perhaps we can broaden your horizon just a bit. We'll put that in perspective in just 1 minute. Suggestion number 3 involves using mill forms, mill shapes as much as possible. For example, a piece like this, which is just as you see it, this is the way it can be ordered from United States Steel. This is an attempt to minimize in-plant forming on your part. In this particular instance, all we need to do is measure the piece to the right size, cut it off, finish the ends, and, well, pierce openings for fastenings, of course, and just assemble it, and you're all set. We'll put that in perspective. And the final suggestion, and this is perhaps the most intriguing, and that is to use the full range of tooling that's available for low-volume production. Now, if that sounds just a little vague, that's deliberate. We're attempting to pique your curiosity. But what we're suggesting is that you use metal fiber dies to stamp out, well, pieces like this, for instance. This happens to be a wing for a truck bumper. We'll tell you more about that in a minute, and since the minute is just about up, why not start with suggestion number 1, which involves interchangeability. The best way of illustrating it for you would be to use this particular model right here. Now, this happens to be a cab-over truck unit, cab-over engine, that is, and it is apparent that almost all of the trim and structural members are totally interchangeable. You'll notice immediately that this right quarter panel, for instance, is interchangeable with the left rear, as is most of the door skirts and so on. For instance, this entire panel could be turned around and used in the rear. However, when we talk about interchangeability, we're referring not only to interchangeability within a single unit, but interchangeability amongst a family of models. So let's have a look at a couple of others. For instance, the one right over here. This one happens to be a cab forward model, that is cab forward of the engine unit. And then we have another big one right over here, again illustrating interchangeability. And this one is a heavy-duty off-the-road dump truck. Now, I think you can see that we've made small variations here. We have simply cut the cab in half, but you can appreciate the similarity, the fact that interchangeability would work here, these quarter panels, doors, and so forth. A good illustration of how you can reduce costs through interchangeability in the automotive industry. By the way, although we're showing only 3 models here, there are 7 different types and models which are available in a wide range of sizes for various applications. So there's a good illustration of how, through interchangeability, you can build a family of models to perform a number of different functions. Now, you recall that suggestion number 2 involved designing sheet metal components so as to do away with the need or minimize the need for matching metal dies, which are of necessity expensive. And I think we can best illustrate that by taking a look at this particular model. Here we have designed a piece of sheet metal. In this particular instance, this is USS galvanized, which was chosen because of its resistance to corrosion. And not only forming the side piece, but we have also formed the roof of the unit as well. And both of these are made out of sandwich panel. And of course, the reason for using that is because it has extreme strength at the same time that it maintains light weight. Now, the roof portion of it was designed as a structural member, giving good rigidity to the unit. Now, you'll notice that these shapes are basically simple yet smart and not too complex to be formed on traditional, conventional brake press or roll-forming tooling devices. All of this calculated, once again, to minimize the cost of production in the automotive industry. Now, our third suggestion involved using mill forms or mill shapes as much as possible. And we use the illustration of the bumper, and I think you can see exactly what I mean now. We have used a piece of USS Par 10, which comes in its present form, can be ordered exactly as you see it, right from U.S. Steel, and you simply measure it, cut it to size, smooth the edges, and assemble it. That's all there is to it. When we speak of mill forms, however, we range very wide here because the most useful forms would be, well, rolled forms or tubular shapes. And I can give you an illustration of that right here on the large unit. These shapes, for instance, are another illustration of mill forms or shapes which are available. And they can be designed right into the vehicle at a considerable cost saving to you. So this would perhaps be another application of cost cutting in automotive manufacture. Now, a little bit earlier, one of the things we talked about was using the widest range of tooling which is currently available in order to reduce the cost of production. And what we're talking about now is in current automobile production, that is at the low volume end of the line, say up to 5,000 units, you are already using plastic dies. And then traditionally, when you get beyond the 5,000 figure, you change over to hard tool steel dies, but these are of necessity more expensive. And we're suggesting that you consider steel fibers impregnated with resin or with nickel. And these have a potential of 50,000 units. And it was on just such a die, a metal fiber die, that this particular piece was stamped. This happens to be a wing for a truck bumper. Now, although this is the largest sample of it, this is what it looks like on the unit. Now, there's a good illustration again of cost cutting by means, in this instance, of using metal fiber dies. By the way, a bit later you'll have the opportunity of examining some of the dies which are available here within the exhibit area, and we have our representatives who will explain the entire process. This is a molding or shaping process in the formation of these dies. They do not have to be machined, and so you are saving not only expense, but you're saving time, lead time and development through the use of metal fiber dies. Now, before leaving this particular group of models, I'd like to point out that there are other advantages inherent in some of these cost-cutting ideas. One of the examples would be in the design of this unit, we have saved about 30% of the weight of the cab, and so you get increased accessibility to not only the engine, but the suspension system. Of course, this certainly would apply to the cab forward model, which we looked at a bit earlier. In the case of this big unit, of course, we save a good deal of weight through its design, and I'd point out that this really has nothing to do with the demonstration, but I have it in my contract that I have the fun of playing with this for just a moment. So I'd like to demonstrate for you that the wheels actually operate. They're hydraulically controlled, as indeed is the dump unit itself. So there's a good illustration of the operation of that unit. And I can't leave the area without feeling that this would make a wonderful exhibit for the toy department of just about, well, any department store around Christmas time. And now, if we could direct your attention to the next portion of our exhibit, we'd like to tell you something now about a vehicle whose use is entirely interchangeable. So if you'll join me over here, I'll move on to that next section. Now, we've been talking a good deal about interchangeability, so we'd like you now to look at a model, well, the use of which is completely interchangeable. Here's what we mean. When we look at the unit from this side, we recognize it as, well, a mobile or self-propelled family vacationer. And yet, when we rotate it 180 degrees, we see that it's a panel truck. Now, the interchangeability of this unit is possible because we have designed a central core or a central cube which does not vary from model to model. This is extremely important because a unit like this would be, well, a relatively low volume item. And this gives you the opportunity of varying your product mix very easily. We mean by that the central portion of it, the basic cube, remains the same. And all we're doing is varying the panels. All of these panels, of course, interlock and are interchangeable from model to model. The construction throughout, by the way, consists of sandwich panel, the side walls, the floor, as well as the roof. And this is exactly what it looks like. 1-inch sandwich panel, which would give us the load-bearing capacity in this unit of 3,500 pounds. But 3,500 pounds not only on the floor of the model, which is totally flat, but also on the roof. Now, in the case of it being a passenger unit, as we see it on this side, this means that the family would have the opportunity of using the deck or the roof as a, well, as a sun deck. Whereas when the unit is used as a panel truck, as in the case of a utility, we could use that deck portion for, well, a load-bearing roof for the carrying of ladders or heavy equipment. Good illustration of interchangeability in this case by designing a central cube which remains the same. Now, all of the cost-cutting features have been put to good use here. Interchangeability, of course, you notice the similarity, exactly alike, the bumpers front and rear. We also have used sheet metal components, obviously. We have used mill forms. That's exactly how the bumpers were created. And then, of course, we have also used metal fiber dies in creating the splash pans here beneath the bumpers front and rear. So there's a good illustration of total interchangeability in the case of this combination family camper or vacationer and a panel truck. And now to show that we haven't lost our interest, as a matter of fact that interest is as deep as ever in the passenger car market, may we show you now a very handsome model right here. As you look at it in silhouette from this side, you can see that it's a very beautiful town car. And this is proof of the versatility of the flexibility of steel. Not only being very useful metal, but one that answers, in this particular instance, the designer's demand for a material that is aesthetically beautiful. I'd like to point out that our interchangeability factor is still working for us in the case of the design of this front grille, which was stamped from 2 dies. Here's an illustration of what we mean. Here is one of the 2 dies which was used to form all of the component parts of the grille. For example, this one fits here and here, as well as here and here. And of course, the other die was used to stamp out the pieces which fit here. Now, the same technique was used in the design of the rear as well. We had some fun with this model, though. As I rotate it for you now, we'll see that we designed the other side of it as a very handsome sports landau. And of course, you notice the stainless steel exhaust pipes here, somewhat reminiscent of the earlier Duesenberg or Mercedes-Benz. Now, we think that this model, along with all of the others, proves United States Steel's interest in attempting to help you solve your problems in the automotive industry, as a matter of fact, by helping you build better automobiles every year. Of course, the proof of everything that we've said here lie in the drawings behind us in the back wall, and they're designed for easy viewing, and we hope you'll take your time and examine them a little bit later at your leisure. Also, in case you've missed any of the points which we were discussing during the demonstration, we have a very handsome booklet which will be available to you immediately after the demonstration, entitled, most appropriately, Perspective, which has been the whole idea behind the demonstration. Now, gentlemen, we think that you may have attended very many shows of this type at which you've received many facts. But we very much doubt that you've ever been at a show such as this where you were so completely surrounded by facts. Now, we don't want you to think that the show is over. On the contrary, we have our United States Steel representatives stationed at all of the exhibit areas. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask them. You're not taking up their time, or mine either. That's what we're here for. Meanwhile, we thank you very much for your attention, and we hope that you've had a wonderful day.
Now guests were free to browse through the technical exhibits that had suddenly appeared around them. These exhibits in the center of the room were stages just moments ago. To help you gain a proper perspective on the presentation, the area required was almost as large as a football field. Draperies were hung from a ceiling approximately 3 stories high so as to achieve the totally different ranges of atmosphere necessary for an insight into steel's perspective. Dinner, which was served in this area, came next, followed by an invitation to examine the technical exhibits and discuss them with U.S. Steel product experts. Well, that's it. The past, the present, and a glimpse of the future. Your perspective on steel and the automobile.